My name's Sarah Nemenchek, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Sarah.
I want to thank Paige for such a nice introduction. For all of you guys that prayed with me before the meeting, it really touched me and impacted me more than usual tonight. I want to shout out to Lawrence for the food. I was very impressed with the food. Y'all have stepped it up here. And to Hannah, who's so helpful with the microphone, and you're doing a great job with your service. And I think Kevin asked me, I just don't know who asked me to be here tonight, but thank you so much. I do love a lot of you guys. I've known a lot of you guys. Some of you are yet to be known, and so it's a privilege and an honor to be here tonight in the presence of people who, and this is where I get weepy. I told Chuck, I warned Chuck, I think I'm going to get weepy tonight. And so I hear Dwight got weepy recently too, so I might do the same thing, but just in the presence of some people that really saved my life. And so I'm going to tell you in a general way what I was like and what happened and what I'm like today as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous coming into my life, and the steps and how they've changed me, and getting to know, developing a relationship with a power greater than myself that's allowed me to become a different woman than the woman who walked through these doors so many years ago. My sobriety date's December 24th, 1998, and I'm originally from Wilson. I got sober there. I now live in Durham, North Carolina, and I'm a member of the Primary Purpose Group in Durham, and so we invite you to come. We are still hybrid, so if you ever want to log in, you don't have to go physically to come visit us. And sometimes people do from this area, and it's just so nice to see them on screen when we see them. And we've tried to make our group be inclusive to the people online as inclusive as it is to the people in the meeting. And it's been a neat format. We still have people coming to Alcoholics Anonymous for the first time ever, virtually. And it's neat to see them transition and navigate. Do they want to come and be in person and things like that? So we're still reaching new people coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's really exciting to be a part of. Okay, so I think I've checked most of the boxes. One of the things that I think I want to do, I'm going to try to honor a request. Like Earl and I were laughing before the meeting tonight that you can take a girl out of the motels on 301, but you can't quite take all of that out. There's still some left in me, and so I have this mixed life today that I woke up at 5:25 this morning. I was actually awake a little bit earlier, but I woke up. I'd gotten everything packed the night before, multiple changes of clothes because I'm a gypsy. I'm still a gypsy. In my drinking, I lived out of my car, and I guess I'm still doing some of that today, but I had multiple changes of clothes. I had my lunch packed. I worked out this morning. I went to work. I made it on time. I walked up to my front desk, and a lady of AA that works with me had left this beautiful little message, like, hello, good morning. Like, she had dropped it off at my front desk, like the beautiful relationships we form here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a dental hygienist. I work at a university, one of the most respected dental schools in the country. And I make a difference in people's lives. I'm a dental hygienist, and I connect with people, and I love what I do, and God handpicked this profession for me. I donated blood today. I'm a person that should not have the ability to donate blood because of how I lived, and it's like my ninth step to the world and to God of thank you so much for letting me survive that. I had a mammogram today. It's negative. I've got a year to go till I have to be checked. I'm taking care of boxes, I'm living life. I'm a productive member of society. I'm taking care of my body today. I came here. I had a lovely, little meal with Deborah before getting here. I took a nap in my car before driving here because I still sleep in my car sometimes, and because it was going to be safer for the world for me to take a little nap before I got on those crazy highways. I pumped gas and changed my clothes in the back seat of my car while I was pumping gas. Earl is shaking his head like this is not appropriate. And then I made it here, and I'm able to be a part of this wonderful fellowship where lives are still being changed. My life has been changed and continues to be changed, and I'm able to participate in other people's lives. and be, have a relationship with God where I'm able to connect with God's other children, through this program on a level that is so much more special than any other place that I've been able to do so. So that's a little snapshot of like what my life looks like today. And it is because of Alcoholics Anonymous that I can laugh at a lot of those things, because I have that unique combination of being able to navigate such different worlds because of where I've come from and where God's allowed me to be today. It's phenomenal. So again, I'm originally from Wilson, North Carolina. I'm not from a drinking family. I didn't grow up seeing alcohol really consumed in my household. Rumor has it my dad had a problem with alcohol, but my mom laid down the law and said, you have to choose. And he was able to choose and stop drinking. And our literature, clearly defines that as something other than a real alcoholic. And so I didn't grow up seeing alcohol, but I had a lot of the isms of alcoholism before I ever started drinking. I remember more than anything from my childhood being full of fear. I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't shut my mind off. And I would stay awake and worry about things all night long. And I would have the kind of worry that became physical, and I would shake and I couldn't stop. I couldn't control my fear. It was so strong. And I was never happy with what I had. I had chronic malcontent. I always wanted what other people had. I compared what I had, and it was never good enough. And so I was just spiritually ill from a young age. Now, this did not make me an alcoholic, but I did go through some abuse as a child, some sexual abuse by a family member, and it happened for 6 years. And I don't know what kind of kid would let that happen, for 6 years and not talk to an adult about it, but that was me. I lived inside myself. I just didn't feel like I could talk to anybody about that. And so it did not make me an alcoholic, but it did affect me mentally. And so that came out. I grew up, some of the happiest memories, I had a good childhood in a lot of ways. I lived most of the year here in North Carolina, and then a big chunk of when summers were longer, we lived on a farm, a family farm, a dairy farm. My mom's from a dairy farm in Kansas, and my dad's from an agricultural farm in Kansas. So I never quite felt like I fit in many ways, but like in that way in particular, being that I didn't culturally identify with Southern people. And so, but we would go and live on the farms, and we would bring the cows, and we would wake up early and bring the cows in and milk cows, and then we would go ride horses all morning, and we lived like farm kids. Like, it was just the best life ever. And then we would pass out in the afternoon, so we'd be so tired from just physical exhaustion, and then we'd go milk cows again, because you got to milk cows multiple times a day, at least minimum 2. And then we would have a ball in the evenings with other kids our age, sometimes sleep outdoors on flatbed trailers, under the stars. Just a phenomenal way to grow up. And that was during the summers, and I tried to continue that. That was maybe one of my first escapes, was just to escape in horses, and I'm an avid reader still to this day, but I would escape in books and anything that I could. But that, my contact with horses brought me to this neck of the woods. I ran it in Rocky Mount here. I rode, and I found a horse connection here, and it was where I discovered alcohol, as a matter of fact. I was working on a horse farm right around the corner from here. I was teaching kids how to ride horses in the day, and one evening when we were in that awkward age where we couldn't drive yet, but instead of our parents driving us back and forth every day, they let us just sleep overnight on the horse farm. And so it was one of those nights that I discovered alcohol and what alcohol could do for me. And I want to just give you like a little view of what I was like prior to drinking. I was super shy, super self-conscious. Compared myself, I told you, to the people around me. I was running with these 2 girls that were so cool, and I was not. My last name is Nemechek, but my nickname in school was Nerdachek, okay? So I was not cool. And then another thing, too, is that I had the before pictures of Proactiv, the pictures. I had really bad acne, and it was awful. So, but I was running with these 2 girls, and some older kids bought us some alcohol that night, and we all had our eyes set on this one guy, and he paid attention to me. And when I drank that alcohol, I promise you, my acne went away, and it's like I'd been holding my breath my whole life, and I just finally relaxed, and I fit in the world. And I recognized the effect produced by alcohol from the very moment it entered my body. It was magical. It was what I'd been looking for in life. It allowed me to fit in. Not only did it allow me to be on equal playing field or playing level with those other girls, I was suddenly better than them. And I told you that guy that we all wanted attention from paid attention to me that night. And that was just a spiritual awakening in itself. And so that very night, they bought 4 bottles, and each of us got one, and one was left over. And I promise you, I got that bottle. And I needed more of whatever this is. I needed more of that. And I'm a person that pursued alcohol as much and as often as I could from the very beginning. I don't know that I really ever experienced what maybe sometimes like social drinking and these stages that may have happened. Like, I needed more. And I loved drinking to the point where the room spun. I know even a lot of people in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous don't like that, but I loved it. When that happened, I was right where I needed to be. But the problem is that there was not a lot of functioning going on when I'm at that, if I have to drink to that point every time. And so I'm also a person that discovered that if alcohol worked that well on a Saturday night, it would work just as well on a Wednesday night, and it would work just as well on a Wednesday morning. And one of the people that is close, that was in that principals group of Wilson that saved my life, used to say that if you take that morning drink before you need that morning drink, it won't be long before you need that morning drink. And that's kind of how my drinking evolved, is that I just didn't have any limits. I didn't set rules on my drinking like some of us we hear about in meetings, like I'm not going to drink before this time, or I'm not going to drink under these circumstances. I had no restrictions. And so that's, I'm sure, one of the reasons why I kind of the progression of my illness was so fast. So I'm about 13 or 14 when I started drinking, and immediately I suffered consequences from my drinking, from the people that I was drinking with, from my family, from people who had an interest in me, maybe like school or employers. I'm a person that had the greatest of intentions, but had zero follow through once alcohol entered my body. I could not maintain jobs or employments. I couldn't get there on time to open a store if it was my job to open a store. I would leave for lunch and then maybe drink over lunch and just not make it back. I'm a person that had a lot of potential, and it was very confusing for people that interacted with me, that how can someone have so much potential and not be able to follow through like that? And that alcoholism had already taken root in me at that point, and because of my drinking, I couldn't follow through and meet the expectations of others and that great potential that I showed. By the time I was 16, I was already institutionalized for the first time. I was sent to a mental health facility deemed a danger to self and others, and I was sent to Goldsboro, a psychiatric ward, a hospital in Goldsboro. And it was there, I don't remember my alcohol ever being addressed. The only thing that they talked about with alcohol, they just really diagnosed me with mental health problems. They gave me some medications, and the only thing I remember hearing about alcohol was don't mix these medications with alcohol. But the self-respecting alcoholic that I was had to see what it would do. And so I remember being sent away for that first time. It was almost like a little vacation, like a little kind of chance for people on the outside world to forget why they were angry with me because of drinking episodes or problems or conflicts that I may have caused. And so I got out of that place and I continued drinking, like I said, like nothing had happened. That was the height of my gypsy years, probably. My drinking was such that when I started, I could not predict what would happen, if I would make it home. I couldn't predict any part of my drinking once I started. So I kept a bag packed in my car because one never knew where they would end up. And those were the years that I still had a car. And so that was kind of the progression continued. That year, some of my lowest points of my lowest bottoms or lowest things, some of the things that I can kind of throw out there, like sometimes, maybe Hannah can identify with this, but like coming into AA young, like sometimes we'll hear stuff like, I spilled more than you drank. And we felt at times the need to defend our right to be in AA. And during this year, this was the year that I earned some of those examples of like why I deserve to be an Alcoholics Anonymous, some of the life experiences. I've walked the streets of Wilson. I've done things that I'm not proud of. I have slept in gutters. I'm a farm girl, so I'm not afraid of being outside. I'm not afraid of sleeping outside under the stars or in my car that you've heard today. But I had conflict with my parents because of my drinking, and then I would either get kicked out or I would run away, and so just put me in a lot of different circumstances. And so in about a year from the date of being sent away that first time, I was sent away again. I was 17 at the time. This time was not so graceful and so easy. I was taken in handcuffs. My parents had called the law to have me arrested from my home because I was destroying the property. And so I was fighting. If they ever restricted my drinking or cut off my drinking, I would get violent. And so they did that night, and I got violent, and they called the cops, and I was arrested and taken into custody. And in a roundabout way, I made it to, I know it's got a different name now, but I made it to Charter Holly Hill in Raleigh. And I made it in the padded room, and I made it, I was put in the adolescent ward of that facility, and it was a detox, and I was kind of let sit there for a couple days. And then comes the part where they do a family plan, and the family comes and talks about what's next. And my parents had reached a point that my alcoholism was already so advanced and so aggressive and so dangerous at that point that they decided that in order to live with themselves, they wanted to know that, like, if I ever ended up dead one day, they wanted to know that they had done everything they could, and just to have peace of mind. And so they decided that they were going to have me, since I was still a minor, they had me put in a long-term adolescent treatment center, or what was it called? Transitional Living Center. It's like a group home in Sanford, and I was to stay there until I turned 18 years old. And that's where I was really introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, forcefully. I did not go because I wanted to, but what's neat is that the people that ended up getting me sober knew people that ran that facility. And so the message was being indirectly carried to me long before I ever found the people in Wilson at the principals group. And so I was forced to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and we were forced to do a meditational little group in the mornings. We had to study AA literature, the traditions, the steps. We had to get an outside sponsor. We had to begin working the steps. And I was angry about being there. I felt cheated. I felt like I had been unfairly introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 17 years old. I heard people talk about being able to drink for 30 years, and I really felt like I had been denied 30 years of good drinking. So I was angry, and I was resisting everything and fighting everything, and I didn't want to be there. And one of the things that really resonated with me was the literature. I identified with this literature, and I know that it's written in an old language and maybe in vocabulary people of my generation don't honestly hear very much, but I heard what they were talking about, and I identified with things when I sat down and had to sit in those literature study meetings. So I really already had enough experiences at that point where I could identify with the examples given in the book. And so, but nonetheless, I was still fighting it, and I went to the director of the program one day, and I said, listen, I think you've made a big mistake. I shouldn't be here. I don't need to be here. Because my reasoning was that I hadn't done all the drugs that these other kids have done. Now, I have done some, but not enough to have an NA member take me seriously. And so, but my lifestyle, if you looked at me from the outside, it looked like I was on something, but that's how bad my drinking was, is that it looked like I was on more serious things. But I went to this director of this program, and I said, listen, I really think you've made a mistake. I don't need to be here. I've not done all the substances that these other kids have done. I think that I should be able to go home. And he said to me two things. He said, generally the person trying the hardest not to be an alcoholic is the worst. And the other thing that he said is that the degree to which this illness had settled into my mind was much farther advanced than any other person in that program at that time. And that's what the literature really hones in on, is the mind of the alcoholic, the thinking of an alcoholic. It doesn't necessarily hone in on the consequences or the behaviors as much as it does the mind and the thinking of an alcoholic.
And the thinking of an alcoholic was fully established in my mind already at that point. I did not like his answer at all, but I nonetheless had to stay. He did not let me go home, and I walked away from that exchange that day with that director, and I said, I'm going to fake it. I'm going to show them what they want to see, and I'm going to tell them what they want to hear, and I'm going to get them to let me out of here. And so one of the things that I didn't realize is that in letting my guard down a little just to fake it, more of the program came in. I heard more of the truth about myself. And by the time I did get let out of that program, my drinking, AA officially ruined my drinking. And so I did get out. I made a connection to Alcoholics Anonymous on the outside. I visited the principals group of Wilson. I met several women that gave me their numbers, one of which, was to eventually become my first sponsor, and that spoke at my home group last week, which was really special. So I got some numbers, and I made a connection to Alcoholics Anonymous. My transition out of that facility, I went to AA, but I didn't have the desperation to really pursue this program like it was a life or death errand that I was on. I still was not at the point where I could imagine, they say we get to a point where we couldn't imagine life with or without drinking, and I still could imagine my life with drinking. But I didn't consume initially. I thought, well, I've learned enough about my drinking that I'm going to be able to go back into this world. I wanted to go back around people from my past and the lifestyle and the vicarious pleasure of that old world. And I thought that I could be one of those girls that didn't drink because they were out there. I saw them, and I thought I could be one of them that hung on the arms of the maybe powerful looking men or whatever, and criminals, if you want to know the truth, thugs, if you want to know the truth. I thought I could be one of these girls, and I went back out and I tried, and I thought, I've learned enough about myself in this program that I can stop it before it gets out of hand. I'll recognize it. I'll be able to prevent it. And I didn't drink initially, which confused me. And it's another thing is that when the people that you think have a problem with drinking are happy you're not drinking, it's like Jeff Foxworthy. You might be an alcoholic if. And so I went back in that world, and one day, without planning it, without seeing it coming, it was like going to that cafe to, like the stories in the book, just like that. I have those same stories and those same experiences, just substitute a couple details, same stuff. One day I found myself drinking, and I immediately slammed my hands on the bar. How did this happen? What have I done? I put it in my body without even thinking, without even forethought, without a good reason. Like nothing bad had really happened. And I immediately said to myself, I've messed up. I've relapsed. I might as well make a good go at it because I've been unfairly introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous at a young age. I deserve to drink 10 more years. And I told myself that I'd go back out and I'm going to drink. I made a decision right there in that very moment of like, what have I done? The whole thought process eventually evolved to the place where I'm going to go back out and I'm going to drink for 10 more years. I'm going to come back to Alcoholics Anonymous when I'm 28 years old, and I'll have plenty of time to restart my life. And I can assure you that, one of the things that I heard is that I've known since meeting the people in Alcoholics Anonymous that you were my people. I knew this was my home. I loved AA members because I couldn't scare AA members. I mean, maybe where I live, there are some circles of people that can't handle some real cases, But I got sober in this neck of the woods. These people can handle real cases. But I never was, I have been at very low moments of my drinking and tried to seek help with school counselors and been judged if I told them the truth. I have been at very low moments of my drinking and have had church people try to help me, and they take me to their church. And out of 300 people, they pull me up to the front. They just pull me out. They knew how bad I was suffering. They pull me up to the front and talk about what a sinner I am, and like, oh my gosh, it was awful. And so I had bad experiences of telling people what was really going on and being rejected or being judged. And what I loved about you people is that I could tell you the real stories of what was happening, and you didn't back away. You didn't talk to me about to other people in the fellowship, and we don't shoot our wounded here, and I really appreciated that. And so anyway, I made this decision. I'm going to go back out and drink, and I'll have plenty of time to come back to AA in 10 years and restart my life. And I can assure you that when I talk about restarting my life, I start from nothing. I don't accumulate good things when I'm drinking. I don't have things to lose because I never acquire things to lose. My aspiration in life, and this is pretty bad, I mean, it's just going to tell you, my only goal in life when drinking was to stay, 3 goals: to stay under the influence at all hours of the day, at any cost, generally having a man or multiple men lined up to pay me staying and to take care of me, or to have a government check coming in so that I could have some type of income coming in to supply my drinking. And that is all I aspired to in my drinking. And I promise you, I mean, that's all I was hoping for. And so when I talk about needing to restart my life, I have to start from nothing. And so I went back out. I was willing to pay that price. Just give me 10 more years. And I did not make it 10 years. I made it 3 months, and it was bad. I had a head full of Alcoholics Anonymous, the truth about the illness that I suffered from. I tried so hard to apply what I'd learned. I tried to prevent it. I tried to control it, and I was not able to. And so I returned to drinking. It was out of control. I could see my life spiraling out of control. I knew what they were talking about: jails, institutions, and death. And I just knew I couldn't get off the spiral, the downward spiral. I knew where the solution was, and I couldn't seem to make myself go back. And I remember that things were so bad. A normal person, when those things happened to a normal person, they would have stopped. And I recognize that. This is not normal what I'm doing, but I couldn't stop, and I couldn't make myself go back to AA. And so I did get locked up. Around Thanksgiving of '98, I got locked up. My parents said I could stay there until my court date because they could sleep at night knowing where I was. I was good because my friend's mom was in the cell there already. I mean, that's the lifestyle that I was living. But my return to drinking, again, was futile. It was completely unmanageable. And the consequences for me that happened were terrifying. There were consequences that a good lawyer couldn't fix and a good doctor couldn't fix. And that's what really brought me to my knees. And that's what really brought me to a human low, to know the things that I was putting even other people at risk of, and being able to do that. And I may not have been capable of murder, but I was capable of killing people in other ways. It was really bad. A very human low for me. And I drank in that description that Tom and I used to talk about, of just blotting out the reality of life as it was. I did end up bonding out, not by my parents' hand, but by this. I had a mother figure in the street life, and she got me out. And so I finally got out. I drank for another month. A very dark time, very low time, didn't have any hope, didn't see the hope of even AA getting me out of the circumstances that I was in. But I ended up coming back. Christmas Eve's Eve of '98 is the day that I mark as my last drink, what I pray is my last drink. And I went out that night. I had burned all my bridges. I was labeled in my community, hands off. You don't mess with that because it's got a lot of problems that comes with it. And so I did have one person that would pay for me to drink that night. And he picked me up and he took me out. And I remember more clearly than ever that the alcohol didn't work anymore. And I remember that it didn't matter how much I drank. It wouldn't shut off my mind. It wouldn't shut off reality. It wouldn't erase the consequences. That it was just loud and clear. And that it didn't work. And for some reason, this was not characteristic of my drinking. I asked him to take me home. And he took me home that night. I interacted with my family, which is another thing that I never did when drinking. I always picked the times when they weren't going to be home to come back in, to sneak back into the house and then maybe escape again or rest a little bit or shower and then leave again. But I came back home and interacted with my mom. It was Christmas time. It was the Christmas season. I mean, it's right around the holidays. And I interacted with my mom, and I was hungry for some reason. And in front of a refrigerator, that night. I demanded something to eat, and she was just trying to quiet me down. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I'm 18 years old at that time, and I've got 3 younger siblings, and she's trying to create this beautiful holiday spirit in our home. And I was going to ruin another holiday. It's like I could pick holidays. I rolled cars on Christmas days. I went to jail before Thanksgiving. I could pick holidays and ruin them. I gave my dad a black eye for Christmas pictures one year. Just awful stuff. And so we interacted in front of the refrigerator, and I remember in that exchange, I remember seeing fear in my mom's eyes of me, and sadness, like just to see how lost I was. And that was a moment of clarity for me. I didn't recognize it at the time, but the very next day is the first day that I marked as my first day sober. I was in very bad physical condition. I was not bathing regularly because of my drinking schedule, and I had a sore on my body that I believe was from not bathing. And that's how bad I was. And I was in pain, and that first group, we had to walk down a flight of stairs to get to those meetings. And I remember I didn't have a car. My last car had been wrecked by somebody who I'd loaned my car out to, and so I remember through the years, how many women couldn't go to the meeting that night because of how much pain they were in. And I was so desperate I was going to give AA one more try. I was so desperate for the program this time, where I hadn't been before. I was desperate this time. And I went to those meetings, and I plugged in with the people there. And the woman that I told you, Sandy, was my first sponsor. And I made the decision that I was going to give this program a good try, and I was going to take all those suggestions that they give me. Paige gives the most suggestions. And I had this book of all the things Paige said we have to do to be able to stay sober. And I was afraid to not do a single one of them. But I had a notebook of things that Paige said I had to do to stay sober. And they were great suggestions. Look at me, I'm here sober today, So maybe you got to do all those things to stay sober. But I was afraid to not take a single suggestion because I didn't want to reason why this thing didn't work. And so that's how I came at Alcoholics Anonymous this time, was that I was going to do it right. I was going to do everything they said. I was going to work all those 12 steps just like they're laid out in the book. I'm going to follow every instruction, and I'm going to do it. And if this thing doesn't work, I'm going to know, on my dying day, that I tried. And I needed that peace of mind. And I stand before you today to show you that it has worked. And and I'm a mix, like I told you, from a picture of my day today, I'm a mix of the past and the present. But I think that that's what makes us uniquely useful to serve people coming in, is because we may not look on the outside like that woman who walked in the room so many years ago, but I'm that same woman on the inside. I'm more comfortable in a jail taking the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous than I am at that university, And so those are not my people at the university. The people in the jail are my people. And so I'm so blessed. I plugged into this program. I followed all the suggestions. I took the steps as they're laid out in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. As they're laid out in the book, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I saw the promises come true. After I took the actions, I saw the promises come true. I saw my life change. People on the outside recognized it before I recognized it myself. I was still living in my family's home. They were kind enough to let me back in. I was not allowed to touch their vehicles for a long time until I was able to work for a vehicle myself and buy one myself, because they were never giving me another one again. And my life began to change. And steps 1, 2, and 3, they're inside jobs in a lot of ways. There's 2 parts to that first step, and I knew my life was unmanageable, but I had some little questions about the powerlessness. I'm 18 years old. I, to this day, don't even really know what a hangover felt like that much, and I don't even know if I ever sobered up enough to have a hangover, you know what I'm saying? And so I struggled with that concept, but I kept moving. I didn't stop working on this step. I just let God do the work inside me, and through the members that I was in contact with. The second step is, is a step of hope for me, that whatever this situation may currently be, has the ability to change. And it doesn't mean it's going to change in the way that I want it to change, or it's going to look like I want it to look. It means that I can survive this, and I can walk through this, and I can make it through, and that there's a power greater than me, but it just can't be me. And so I walked through that process. Alcoholics Anonymous was undeniably a power. The program, the meetings, my sponsor, at times, they've all been that power greater than me. There's many powers greater than me. The law enforcement's a power greater than me at times, And so, but there's many powers greater than me, and it's been many different things at different times, but I have come to have a relationship with a power that I call God today, that I have, through the steps, been able to establish a relationship with. And I still check myself with other human beings a lot of times, like, am I understanding this message right? I run stuff by other people still. But I've grown to develop a relationship. The third step, I finally did get that car. I worked hard to buy a car myself. I did have a license. I was able to save that miraculously. And my sponsor said, well, it must be God's will for you to give women rides to meetings. And so she gave me that first service of using my little AA car for AA service. And so I was supposed to take people to meetings. And she said, being a member of a home group, so she talked about how serious of a commitment that was, that I'm supposed to be there every time that meeting opens, and it's God's will. If you've chosen this home group, it's God's will that you're supposed to be there when it opens and when it's meeting. And so the concept of the next right thing began to evolve in my life, and good, orderly direction. And so it's been neat to walk that discovery of how do I recognize what's God's will. Sometimes it's easier for me to recognize what's not God's will, like ruling things out more than I clearly know what God's will is for me. And so it's been neat to walk that path and begin to just kind of always live in step 3. Step 4 for me was hard. I'm a person that likes to just kind of push things under the rug and cover it up and close the door on it and not look. I feel like I want to vomit when I have to look inside about what's really going on. So I drug my feet with the 4th step, and what happened is that I plateaued out on my spiritual growth, and I realized I was not going to go anymore until I took that action. I took that action finally because I was miserable, and I took the action. I was afraid that in doing a 5th step, I would have the same response from my sponsor that I had from the community when I got honest with them about my lifestyle and the things that I'd been doing and things like that. So I dropped Sandy some big stuff just to test her out, before the date to see if she could handle it. And she worked at like a close custody men's prison at that time. She was fine. She could handle anything. But it was I did a 5th step with her, and what was neat is that the promises that they talk about in the 5th step, after the 5th step, they talk about being on a different footing, looking the world in the eyes again. And I remember that it was called Wilson Tech at the time, but I was going to Wilson Tech. And I remember coming into contact with a person from my past that I would rather forget. And but I remember being able to, I knew I was on a different footing at that point. I was a different person. I was a different woman. And that the process had begun to change me significantly enough that I wasn't a prisoner of the past anymore. And so it was really exciting and to feel that and to experience that. 6th and 7th step was hard for me. It's kind of like I was alluding to that, like, you get a horse thief sober, and you still sometimes have a sober horse thief, like a drunken horse thief sober, and you have a sober horse thief. And I had a lot of behaviors that worked for me while I was out there drinking, but were unspiritual in nature. And so I came into Alcoholics Anonymous still living off of some of those tools and those things that I manipulated people with and life with and circumstances with. And it caused me to sicken spiritually. I was still acting on some of those things, and I came very close to drinking. And outside this building, in this parking lot, I remember getting honest with Paige and Pam and like somebody else that was in that parking lot. I was just at a really critical point of like this tipping place. And I got honest about some of that unspiritual behavior that I was doing. And I made a commitment, a decision that night that I was going to stop the behavior, because God cannot remove a behavior if I'm continuing to act on it, right? And so I made a decision with those members that Pam and Paige and somebody else, I don't remember who it was, but I ended up that there was power in that commitment I made with those other people, and I got honest with them. I was so close to drinking. I never did have to drink. But do you remember how I told you I had some question about powerlessness of the 1st step? And I didn't quite understand it at the first time I went through the steps, but I understood it more clearly than ever there because I tried so hard to fight the thoughts of drinking, the obsession to drinking, and I knew my behavior. I knew it. I'd done it over and over and over, that same behavior over and over. I knew my pattern, and I knew what drinking again looked like for me, and I was going down. And because I connected with these members beforehand, I stopped that behavior to let God come in to remove that behavior. I never had to drink again, and I've walked away from that experience having a more solid grasp on the first step. That's been unshakable for me. And so that marked an end to some very unspiritual behavior that I had in sobriety and a new path for me. And I ended up staying single for about 5 years, and I really focused on my program. And I ended up going to school during that time. It's really neat how I was at Wilson Tech, I told you, just kind of piddling around, doing something positive, not really having much direction in my life. An AA member offered me a job in his dental office in Wilson, and I got to be there part-time, temporary, because I was replacing a girl who was out on maternity leave, and the lady never came back. And it's almost like God handpicked my profession. I told you that because the lady that, the hygienist there asked me, she said, Sarah, have you ever thought about what you're going to do when you grow up? Because I didn't think I was going to live into my 20s, at the rate I was going. I was like, no, I haven't thought about it. I don't have an idea. She's like, have you ever thought about being a hygienist? Like, no, not really. And I just really wasn't interested. But she had an admissions packet sent to my house in the mail. And it comes in the mail one day, and I call Sandy. I'm like, this just came in the mail. I don't know where it came from. I'm sure the girl that I work with had it sent in. And Sandy's like, well, fill it out. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go. She says, just fill it out and let it go. Just release it to God. Release it to the universe and let it go. And so I followed the instructions, and I did that. And then months later, an acceptance letter came in. And I called Sandy again. I'm like, Sandy, this letter just came in. What am I supposed to do? She says, go to school, And so, again, God handpicked this profession for me. I went to school. I graduated from hygiene school in Goldsboro, next door to the psych ward that I graduated from. And it's like God was keeping me humble, like reminding me where I can go back to. And so I graduated from hygiene school, and I graduated at the top of my class, highest academic achievement, and I was just as active as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. During that whole program, I've always known that Alcoholics Anonymous needs to be first in my life, and then the other stuff comes in around it, because only because AA is in the middle do I have those things, those other things in my life. Do I sustain those things? Do they last? Do they last? And so I went right on to school, and I told you, I ran in the motels of 301, with the most questionable characters that you can imagine. And I got the chance to, I got out of that lifestyle because of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was able to be given an opportunity to go to UNC Chapel Hill as a student. And I felt so out of place there. I'm talking about, I was so insecure, inside, do they know who I am? I just really struggled during those years too about identity and just remembering who I was, and I didn't feel like I belonged there, but I had every right to be there. God had placed me there, and I studied, and I finished another hygiene degree there, and I got a job around that time for a dentist, and I worked for her for 22 years, and it was the same job, and it was very hard. I developed a beautiful relationship with many of my patients. Some were at my wedding, some were at my baby showers, some were, oh my gosh, some I'm still in contact with. One texted me today, and like, I'm going to get my teeth cleaned and you're not going to be there. You want to go walking sometime? And it's just so special to have those relationships that have formed over the years. And so I worked. I'm gainfully employed now, and just this past year, I was able to. I was offered a job at the university that I felt inadequate to study at, and I now work at the dental faculty practice there, which is an honor, and I can tell they are so impressed with my work, and I'm humbled by that. I had to go before the board of dental examiners to get a license many years ago when it was time because of my colorful past, and I was never dishonest with them. They asked me, do you think you're ever going to drink again, when I had to go before that board and get a license those 22 years ago. That I said, if I continue to take the actions that I'm taking now, I won't ever have to drink again. That's what our book says. And I think somebody on that board knew that was the right AA answer, and so I was given a license, and I've honored and respected that license and tried to just really be upright and very ethical about my job, because I'm so grateful to have it, but I shouldn't have that because of the things that I've done and the life that I lived beforehand. And so I've been able to make amends and clean up the past with my family. I have a beautiful relationship with my parents. I have 2 children now. My youngest just turned 13, and so I have teenagers, a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. They've not seen their mother drunk. They've seen their mother crazy at moments. But that's what's also beautiful, is that they've seen their mother practice the 10-step in our life, and to be humble and to admit when I'm wrong. I can admit when I'm wrong, and I have a really beautiful relationship with my kids. And to this day, they're very good kids. Now, I know that can change still because of like what age I was. I'm just waiting for karma to come back around for me. But for right now, they're really good kids, and I'm very grateful to have them, the relationship that I have with them today. I did end up learning how to date in sobriety. Had a relationship for a number of years with someone that many of you guys know, and it was a friend that became more in the rooms of AA that didn't end up lasting, but we are still friends today. His birthday was recently. I still send him a birthday. Happy birthday. You know, we're friends, and we can be so pleasant when we see each other. But I did meet someone else in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's in Spanish AA, and I'm in English AA, and so it's a little separate. It's very different. Very different. And but I learned how to speak Spanish in AA, and that's another way God's used me. I have several Spanish-speaking sponsees now, and it's just really great to connect with women in a way that I used to hate women. You know, like now I have like so many women in my life. I've been able to transition in this life of being a mom. I didn't work full-time as my kids were young, and I was able to raise them, and now like I've re-entered a professional world, and I'm like with adults again. I'm so excited, and I'm really having a good time. And hey, Mary, and so I'm really enjoying this. I'm growing a lot. I'm stretching a lot professionally now, which is scary at times and it's uncomfortable at times, but I feel really neat to be engaged in that. And so in closing, I know my time is running out. You know, the 10-step is a step that I still today, this work, being in relationship, like in contact with a sponsor, being in contact with this program, doing regular inventory, looking inside, prayer and meditation, and then working with others has really been the fuel for me as I transitioned into motherhood in particular. Like when I was pregnant, this big pregnant, someone said, Sarah, you know, when you get sober or when you have those babies, you're not going to be able to be in prisons every night of the week like you are now, taking the AA message into them. You're not going to be able to do all that service that you used to be do. And it's true, my life changed a lot being a mom. But it's neat that AA has other services that I've been able to do. And I'm just as active as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And God's really, instead of being in all those prisons and jails like I used to be all the time, right now God's using me a lot with sponsorship. And I'm booked. I don't know where anymore we come in. But they keep getting sent, and it's neat. God just manages all that. There's time. It's really neat how that works out. We take the steps right before I went and took this new job. Like I had 3 we finished the steps like right before they went, and I've got another 2 that are getting ready, 2 or 3 right now that are finishing them. And it's kind of like that's how I pace my life. I said, before I take this new job, we got to get you through those steps, you know, like, but that's the priority of my life right now, is just being an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous in my home group, in my community. Like I told you today, I'm a productive, member of my community today. I'm not a delinquent any longer. I'm not participating in crimes any longer. And I'm not a risk to you any longer. And it's really great. One of the things I love about AA is that up to this point, AA has had everything I need to get me to the next stage. And Peter Wilkins used to talk about that, like just praying for everything. Just, God, please give me what I need to make it through to the next stage in sobriety. And it's like I've gone through so many different stages in sobriety, and I'm getting older, and I know some of you are probably like, Sarah, you don't even know what you're talking about yet, but I'm feeling it. I'm no longer a young person in AA. And it's really neat to transition into that next stage where the topics of my discussion are what's coming next physically, what's coming next with our parents, like dealing with aging parents. And that's the next stage for me, is children growing up, doing more adolescent-like things, leaving the nest, things like that. And so, but AA to this point has had everything that I need to get me to that next, stage of sobriety. And so I trust The second step is that, a power greater than me will restore me to sanity. As life continues to evolve, that this program will continue to work. It will have everything I need. It's not saying that one person has what I need, but this community, this program as a whole, where all the jet engines of Alcoholics Anonymous, on fire at the same time, have what I need to get me through to the next step. So anyway, I want to thank you for your attention tonight and just being the part of my life that you've been through the years, all of you guys. I love you all dearly, so thank you.